Welcome to you. And we're going to talk about knife crime in just a moment. But first, I do want to get your reflections on international news and the situation in Gaza. Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, is today, we're told, to visit Gaza and will inspect some of the aid distribution sites there. What is your message that you want Steve Witkoff to take back to Donald Trump?
Well, I think all of us have been appalled by the scenes coming out of Gaza, and we all want the humanitarian aid to get in to the people who are so desperately in need. So I'm pleased that there is this visit taking place. I hope that he will see for himself what's actually happening. But clearly this government is calling for the reinstatement of humanitarian aid going in to Gaza. We've already been involved in drops along with Jordan to make sure that humanitarian aid is going in now. But there's obviously much more that needs to happen.
And, of course, the government has repeatedly been asked this week about your announcement of a commitment to recognising a Palestinian state if Israel meets certain conditions. However, it's been particularly controversial because of the lack of conditions on Hamas and also lack of clarity about that. So I just want to get clarity now. There are no conditions on Hamas when it comes to recognising Palestinian statehood.
Well, we've been clear from the start that Hamas has to release the hostages today.
But that is not a condition.
That has been something we've been saying for really from the start. So releasing the hostages, they need to disarm. There needs to be a ceasefire, and Hamas need to now accept that they have no part to play in the future of any Palestinian state. And what's interesting is that we're seeing key players in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, now being really clear this week that Hamas should disarm and have no future around the Palestinian state.
You're saying that's what you want, but it's not actually a condition, is it, of the government recognising Palestinian statehood. Jonathan Reynolds said that there weren't conditions on Hamas because you won't negotiate with terrorists, but some will see that as a bit of a cop-out.
Well, I think Jonathan's right in that Israel is a sovereign, democratically elected state. What the Prime Minister has done is set out the conditions that he wants to see when he makes a decision in September about whether to move forward with recognising the Palestinian state. So that's around a ceasefire. It's around being very clear that they will not annex the West Bank, about allowing the humanitarian aid in, and also recognising now we need to move to looking at a peaceful way forward and looking at the two-state solution again. So that's what the Prime Minister has set out. But all through this, we have been really clear about Hamas, who are a terrorist organisation. They need to release the hostages. They need to down their weapons. They need to get out because they have no part to play in the future for the Palestinian people.
OK, but it's not a condition.
Well, we've been setting this out right from the beginning. This is what we expect of Hamas, but they are a terrorist organisation, which is different from Israel, who are a democratically elected state.
OK, I'm going to move on to domestic issues, and you're announcing today figures about knife crime.
Yes.
You say that robberies involving a knife or the threat of one have reduced in most of the UK's high-risk areas. So how is that happening? How have you made that happen?
So when we came into power last July, in the previous year, there'd been a 14% increase in knife robberies. What we've done is we've turned that around to a 6% reduction, and we've done that through working with police forces in the 7 areas where knife crime and knife robbery has been most concentrated. And I want to pay tribute to those forces, including the West Midlands, who've seen a 25% reduction. That is something very positive. It's a start. There's obviously a lot more to do, and it involves sharing good practice. So the use of drones, the use of patrols, plainclothes patrols, knife arches, dogs, using the NPR mechanism. A whole range of initiatives to make sure that we are really bearing down on knife crime.
You say it's a start, but you are promising to halve knife crime in a decade, and today we're talking about cutting it by about 6% in only a few areas. So you have got a long way to go.
Well, those areas are the areas that have the biggest part of knife-enabled robbery. They are about half almost.
OK, but you do still need to make it nationwide. You need to boost that figure, and you also need to make it sustainable, because you talk about the drones, the archers, the dogs, the increased patrols as well. And police chiefs are warning this summer that after years of cuts and given the current funding allocations, they haven't got enough money to sustain staffing levels, given all the demands on them. I mean, is this kind of programme sustainable and able to roll out more broadly?
Well, look, I accept it's challenging for all police forces after years of austerity. What I would say is this government has committed an extra £1.2 billion to policing for this year. We've got increases in the comprehensive spending review, which was announced in June. I fully accept that it's challenging, but there is resource already available, particularly around hotspot policing. This summer, we've got this summer initiative where we are using the neighbourhood policing guarantee. We're putting 13,000 additional police personnel into our communities over the course of this Parliament. This year, by the end of March, we will have 3,000 of those in our high streets, town centres and villages. That's really important in terms of the confidence that brings to communities and also tackling some of the crime that people care about in their own local areas, the antisocial behaviour, the shop theft, the vehicle crime. This is an important start. We've been in post 12 months. This is positive progress, but I'm not pretending there isn't much more to do.
OK, on the issue of crime, official data is showing that the number of foreigners in prisons for serious violent sexual and theft offences has surged in the last year. The number of foreign-born prisoners is now higher than at any point since 2013. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, is saying it's down to uncontrolled immigration and says you need emergency measures to deport that population. What do you have to say to that?
Well, perhaps I could say to Robert Jenrick that, you know, his government were in power for 14 years. We've been in power for 1 year. We've seen now an increase in the number of foreign national offenders sent back to their nation, their home nation. 14% increase on what happened in the year before we came into power, over 5,200. We're also now going to change the law so we can remove foreign national offenders at 30% of their sentence rather than the current 50%. We think that's important. And we're also putting officials into prisons to enable the smooth running of getting these offenders out of the country. So we're very well aware of what we need to do and we are acting on this.
Finally, I just want to ask you about something that Annalise Dodds has told our political editor, Beth Rigby. She, of course, a former Shadow Chancellor, former Labour Minister. She is talking about wealth taxes and said they should be considered by the Treasury. And she isn't the first senior Labour figure to do this. We had Lord Kinnock telling us as well that the government should consider that. Does she have a point?
Well, I think the Labour Party and the Labour government welcome contributions from everybody. But
would you like to see a wealth tax?
Ultimately, it's down to the Chancellor to make decisions about what she's going to announce in the budget later this year.
It's her decision, but do you have a view on this?
Well, I think whatever decision that the Chancellor makes, it will be based on our values as a Labour government. And we've made very clear commitments around tax. I think it's important, though, that all these issues are looked at and discussed and we look at the evidence about what will work and what won't work.
OK, well, Dame Diana Johnson, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks.